If you've ever worked a night shift, you already know something most people don't. There's a specific moment, usually sometime after midnight, when the world feels thinner, quieter, like you're the only one awake, and whatever's out there finally has room to move. That's the moment this started for me. My name is Evan Yazzie, and at the time, I had been a patrol officer with the Navajo Nation Police for just under 7 years, long enough to stop being jumpy, long enough to know the difference between fear and instinct, long enough to recognize when something feels wrong before your brain catches up. That night, I was working out of the window rock station, December, cold enough that the air burned when you breathed in, the kind of cold that seeps through your uniform and settles into your bones, no matter how many layers you wear. The station was quiet, too quiet. Officer Bigay was at the computer across from me, half asleep, scrolling through reports. Sergeant Largo was in his office with the door cracked, light still on, pretending not to nod off over paperwork. The radio hadn't chirped in almost 40 minutes, which never happens on night shift. I was sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago when the radio crackled. Not loudly, not urgently, just wrong. Unit 7, dispatch said, her voice lower than usual. Can you copy? I straightened up immediately. Unit 7, go ahead. There was a pause, long enough that I almost asked again. Then she said, we've got a 1055, livestock disturbance. Caller reports unusual activity. That phrase alone made my stomach tighten. Dispatch doesn't add adjectives unless the caller insists. Location, I asked. Approximately 8 miles north of Highway 12, past the old trading post. Caller is Thomas Nez, 56 years old. I knew the name. Everyone did. Thomas Nez wasn't a prank caller. He wasn't a drunk. He wasn't someone who exaggerated. Dispatch hesitated again before continuing. He specifically asked if he could avoid saying certain words on a recorded line. The room felt colder. What words? I asked. Another pause. He used the term ye na you lushi before stopping himself. No one in that room moved. Officer Begay looked up from his screen. Sergeant Largo leaned out of his office. The word hung there, heavy and unwelcome. For people who don't grow up here, it's easy to dismiss that kind of thing. But for us, certain words aren't superstition. They're warnings. You don't say them casually. You don't say them at night. And you definitely don't say them unless you're scared enough that manners stop mattering. Did he say why? I asked. 3 sheep dead, dispatch replied. Gate open, tracks he doesn't recognize. And he reported sounds. What kind of sounds? She exhaled softly into the mic. He said they sounded like animals trying to remember how animals are supposed to sound. I didn't like that. Copy, I said. I'm en route. As I stood up and grabbed my gear, Sergeant Largo caught my eye. You want backup? He asked quietly. Standard procedure would have been yes. But we were short that night, and livestock calls usually end up being coyotes or feral dogs. Pulling another unit meant leaving a bigger area uncovered. I'll assess first, I said. If it's legit, I'll call it in. He didn't argue, just nodded once. Be careful, he said. People don't use that word unless they mean it. Outside, the cold hit me like a wall. I climbed into my Explorer, radioed my departure, and pulled onto Highway 12. The road stretched ahead of me like a black ribbon. No streetlights, no traffic, nothing but desert and stars. The Milky Way was clear enough to look fake, smeared across the sky like a spill of white paint. The drive gave me too much time to think. 3 sheep could be coyotes. An open gate could be human error. Unfamiliar sounds could be fear filling in gaps. That's what I told myself. But Thomas Nez had lived on that land his entire life. He knew the difference between a predator and something pretending to be one. 20 minutes later, I turned off onto the dirt road by the old trading post. My headlights swept across crumbling adobe walls and rusted signs half buried in sand. The road got rough fast, forcing me to slow to a crawl. That's when I noticed it. The silence. No insects, no distant animals, no wind. Just my engine and my breathing. A red flag mailbox appeared in my headlights exactly where dispatch said it would be. Beyond it, a long driveway led to a cluster of buildings and livestock pens. The main gate to the pen was standing open, not broken, not forced, just open. I parked, radioed my arrival, and stepped out into the cold. My breath fogged in front of my face as I raised my flashlight and called out, "Mr. Nez, Navajo Nation Police." The front door of the house opened immediately. Thomas Nez stood there in a heavy coat and slippers, eyes dark and tired. "Officer," he said quietly, "thank you for coming." I followed his gaze back to the open pen. "That's not how I left it," he said. And for the first time that night, I felt it clearly. Whatever had come onto his land hadn't rushed, hadn't panicked, hadn't acted like an animal at all. It had taken its time. Thomas Nez didn't step outside right away. That should have been the first red flag. Most people, when they call the police for something like this, are desperate to show you what happened. They talk fast. They gesture. They want reassurance. Thomas just stood there in the doorway, shoulders hunched against the cold, like he was waiting for me to say something first. "You didn't touch anything?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I didn't want to change it. My grandfather always said, if something feels wrong, don't interfere until someone else sees it too. That wasn't superstition. That was experience. Show me," I said. We walked around the side of the house toward the livestock pens. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping the ground, the fence line, the open gate. Everything looked normal at a glance. Too normal. The sheep were inside the pen. 3 of them, all lying down. At first, my brain tried to categorize what I was seeing as sleep. Animals huddled together, heads low, bodies still. It took me a step closer to realize what was wrong. They weren't breathing. I knelt beside the nearest one, the beam of my flashlight steady in my hand. There was no thrashing, no blood spray, no signs of a struggle, just clean cuts at the neck. Not torn, not chewed, cut. I've responded to livestock kills before. Coyotes are messy. Dogs are worse. Even mountain lions leave obvious trauma. This looked almost careful. "Is this how you found them?" I asked. "Yes," Thomas said quietly behind me. "Exactly." I leaned closer, examining the legs. That's when I noticed the positioning. The front legs weren't broken. They weren't dislocated. They had been bent backward at the joints and folded underneath the bodies in a way that sheep anatomy simply doesn't allow on its own. No shattered bone, no tearing, just repositioned. My throat went dry. I pulled out my camera and started documenting everything. Wide shots, close-ups, angles, measurements. I forced myself into procedure mode because procedure is the only thing that keeps fear from running the show. "How long between hearing the sounds and finding them like this?" I asked. "Maybe 10 minutes, Thomas replied. "I heard the noises first. That's what made me go check." "What kind of noises?" I asked. He hesitated, eyes drifting toward the dark beyond the fence. "At first it sounded like coyotes," he said. But wrong. Like someone copying them without understanding the rhythm. The pitch kept jumping, and it came from different places too fast. "Coyotes do that," I said automatically. "I know," he replied. "I've lived here 40 years. This wasn't that." I stood and moved toward the far side of the pen. "Did you see anything?" I asked. "No," he said, "but I felt watched." The flashlight beam caught something in the dirt near the fence line. Tracks. I crouched down, heart starting to pick up speed. At first glance they looked familiar. Canid prints, 4 toes, claw marks, large but not impossibly so. Coyote, my brain tried to insist. Then I followed them. The stride length was wrong. Too long. Too even. And halfway across the pen the tracks changed. Not abruptly. Gradually. The front prints began to elongate. The toe spacing widened. A 5th impression appeared where no 5th toe should exist. The depth of the impressions increased, as if whatever was making them had suddenly gotten heavier mid-stride. I followed them to the fence. Near the wire, the front print stopped looking like paws at all. They looked like hands, not human hands, but close enough that my stomach flipped when the realization hit. The fingers were too long. The thumb was offset at an angle that didn't make sense. The palm was narrow, stretched. I pulled out my pocket ruler and measured them anyway. Training doesn't stop just because something doesn't make sense. Thomas crouched beside me, his voice barely above a whisper. It walked on 4 legs, he said. And then it didn't. I didn't answer, because there was something else. A tuft of hair was caught on the barbed wire. I carefully removed it with tweezers and sealed it in an evidence bag. It looked like coarse animal hair at first, gray-brown, thick at the base. But when I held it closer to the light, I noticed the thickness changed along its length. It thinned unnaturally toward the tip, almost stretched. I'd never seen that before. I'm going to send this for analysis, I said. Thomas nodded, not relieved. Officer, he said, I didn't want to say it on the phone, but my grandfather used to tell stories about things that watch us, things that copy. They don't get it right at first, but they keep trying. I straightened slowly. Why did you use that word, I asked. Because this didn't feel like an animal, he said. Animals kill to eat. This felt like practice. A chill crept up my spine. I stood and scanned the darkness beyond the pen. Flashlight cutting across open desert. Nothing moved. No eyes reflected back. No sounds carried on the wind. But the tracks didn't fade. They didn't disperse. They led straight out of the pen and then stopped. Not because the ground changed. Not because they overlapped with others. They just ended. As if whatever made them had simply left the ground. I keyed my radio. Dispatch Unit 7. Go ahead. I'm requesting backup, I said, and I need wildlife services notified at first light. There was a brief pause. Copy, Unit 7, dispatch replied. What's your status? I looked back at the sheep, the tracks, the empty desert. Uncertain, I said, and I don't like it. Behind me, somewhere out past the fence, something made a sound. It was almost a coyote call. Almost. And it was coming from the wrong direction. The sound came again. This time it was closer. I froze, flashlight beam locked on the fence line, every muscle in my body tight. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. That almost made it worse. The call rose and fell unevenly, like something trying to remember how the sound was supposed to go. Coyotes don't hesitate mid-howl. This did. Thomas Nez heard it too. I felt his presence stiffen behind me. That's it, he whispered. That's what I heard earlier. The call stopped abruptly, like someone cutting a recording mid-playback. Silence rushed in to replace it. The kind that presses on your ears and makes you suddenly aware of your own breathing. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, Unit 7. Confirm backup status. Unit 3 is en route. E-Day approximately 14 minutes. 14 minutes suddenly felt like a long time. I didn't like standing still. Stillness makes you predictable. I backed toward my vehicle slowly, keeping my flashlight moving, scanning the pen, the fence, the open land beyond. No eyes reflected back. No movement broke the darkness. But the feeling didn't go away. That pressure between the shoulder blades, the certainty that something was aware of me now. Mr. Nez, I said quietly, I need you and your family to stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but uniformed officers. He nodded immediately. No argument, no questions. My sister lives in Shinla, he said. We can go there. Good, I replied. Pack essentials only. Leave the rest. He hesitated at the door, looking back at the pen one last time. It didn't eat them, he said. I nodded. I know. He went inside. I stayed outside. I circled the property slowly, documenting the track line as best I could without stepping over it. The prints led away from the pen toward open desert, maintaining that same unnatural stride length. I followed them for about a quarter mile before they simply stopped. No scuff marks, no transition to rock, no sign of acceleration or takeoff. Just dirt, empty. That shouldn't have been possible. I stood there longer than I should have, turning in a slow circle, scanning the darkness. My flashlight beam felt weak out there, like it was being swallowed by the night instead of cutting through it. That's when the call came again. This time from behind me. I spun, hand instinctively moving toward my holster. The beam snapped back toward the property. Still nothing. Then another call. This one from my left. Too fast. Whatever was making those sounds was moving far quicker than any animal should have been able to, especially without making noise between positions. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Dispatch, I said quietly into the radio. Advise responding units to approach with caution. Copy, Unit 7, came the reply. I could hear it in her voice now, too. She knew. The calls stopped. And then I saw them. Eyes. They reflected back at me from the edge of my flashlight's reach. Amber green, too bright, too steady. They were higher off the ground than a coyote's would be, wider spaced, and they weren't blinking. I didn't move. In training, they tell you animals will usually break eye contact first, or shift their weight, or show agitation. These eyes did none of that. They just watched. This is Navajo Nation Police, I called out, keeping my voice firm. Identify yourself. I don't know why I said it. Habit, maybe. Muscle memory. The eyes tilted. Not like a head turning. Like the entire structure they were set into rotated slightly, as if whatever was holding them didn't rely on a normal spine. My hand closed around my weapon. Last warning, I said. Make yourself known. The eyes blinked. But not top to bottom, bottom to top. Slow, deliberate. And then they were gone. Not running, not retreating. Gone. I swept my flashlight across the entire area, heart hammering now, breath loud in my ears. Nothing moved. No tracks appeared where they should have been. 14 minutes had never felt so long. When headlights finally appeared on the road, I almost laughed in relief. Officer Benally arrived first, spotlight mounted on his unit. Officer Begay was with him, face tight, alert. They took one look at me and knew something wasn't right. Talk to me, Benally said. I told them everything, the sheep, the cuts, the tracks, the sounds, the eyes. I stuck to facts. No speculation, no theories. Benally crouched near the fence line, examining the prints in the harsh glare of the spotlight. He was quiet for a long time. I don't like this, he finally said. That coming from him meant something. These tracks, he continued. They change. That's not how biology works. Begay swallowed hard. My grandmother used to talk about things that learn by watching. Benally shot him a look. We stick to what we can document. We expanded the search. Wider perimeter. More light. More eyes. Nothing. No further sounds. No movement. No sign of where it had gone. We were regrouping near the vehicles when Benaly's radio crackled. Unit 3, dispatch. Go ahead. Another 10 to 55. Livestock disturbance. Approximately 6 miles north of your current location. Same highway. My stomach dropped. How many animals? Benally asked. Caller reports 3 sheep. The 3 of us looked at each other. Same number. Same road. Same spacing. Whatever this was, it wasn't wandering. It was moving with purpose. Benally exhaled slowly. Dispatch H, he said. Notify Wildlife Services and Command. This may be connected. As we split up to respond, I glanced back toward the desert one last time. I didn't see the eyes again, but I knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with instinct, that it had already seen us. And it was adjusting. The drive north felt longer than it should have. Same road, same darkness, same stars overhead, sharp and uncaring. But everything else felt different now. Once you realize something is moving with intention, every mile marker stops being just a number. It becomes a countdown. Officer Benally took the lead with the spotlight unit. I followed a half-mile behind, radio crackling softly with dispatch updates. Officer Begay stayed back at the Nez property to preserve the scene for daylight investigation. Dispatch, Benally said. Confirm caller identity. Caller is Frank 2, dispatch replied. Property is approximately 6 miles north of the Nez residence, off Highway 12. Same side of the road, same spacing. I felt my jaw tighten. How long ago did the call come in? I asked. 8 minutes ago. Which meant whatever had done this had already finished. We reached the turnoff and rolled onto another dirt road, headlights bouncing over ruts and rocks. The property came into view quickly. A manufactured home, several outbuildings, and a large livestock pen. The gate was open, again. Benally and I exchanged a look, but didn't say anything. We didn't need to. Both of us were thinking the same thing. Coyotes don't open gates twice in one night. We parked and stepped out together, weapons holstered but ready. The cold felt sharper here, biting to my gloves. The silence pressed in just like before. I called out, "Mr. So? Navajo Nation Police." The front door opened slowly. Frank Toe stood there, fully dressed, boots on, jacket zipped. He looked like a man who hadn't been asleep. "Officer," he said, "I was hoping it was you." That sent another ripple of unease through me. "You reported livestock killed?" Benally asked. Frank nodded. 3. We moved toward the pen. Same layout, same stillness. The sheep were positioned almost identically to the others. Clean cuts at the neck. Limbs bent backward, arranged with deliberate care. No signs of struggle. No feeding. I crouched and ran my flashlight along the ground. Tracks. They started as candid prints again. Familiar enough that, on their own, they might have passed casual inspection. But once you knew what to look for, the changes were unmistakable. Stride length increased. Front prints distorted. Diggets multiplied. I followed them toward the fence. "They changed," Frank said quietly. "Didn't they?" "Yes," I replied. "I watched it," he said. Benally and I both looked up. "You watched it?" Benally asked carefully. Frank swallowed. "Not clearly. I heard the sounds first. Same thing you're probably thinking. Coyotes. Then I saw movement by the pen. Too fast. Too smooth." "Did you see a shape?" I asked. "Not exactly," he said. "But I saw it stand." That word hit harder than it should have. "Stand how?" I asked. He hesitated. Like it didn't need 4 legs anymore. Benally straightened slowly. "Did it notice you?" he asked. Frank nodded. That's when I went back inside. Smart man. I moved toward the far edge of the pen. The tracks continued beyond it, leading toward open land. Same direction as before. Same steady spacing. I pulled out my notebook and started marking distances. Nez property to So property. 6 miles. So property to the next major ranch north. Another 6. My pulse picked up. "Benally," I said quietly, "this isn't random." He nodded. "I know." We walked back toward the vehicles. "Dispatch," Benally said into the radio. "How many livestock calls tonight on Highway 12? There was a pause as dispatch checked. "Unit 3, she replied. "You're the second." "No others reported yet." "Yet," Benally echoed. I opened the map on my dashboard and traced the road north with my finger. "If this spacing holds," I said, "the next property is the Yazzie Ranch." Benally's expression darkened. "That's a big one," he said. "Family lives on site." 5 people, I thought. Kids. "Dispatch," I said. "Attempt contact with the Yazzie residents. Advise them to secure livestock and remain indoors." "Copy," dispatch replied. Attempting contact now, we waited. Seconds stretched. "Unit 7, dispatch came back. No answer. Landline rings through. Cell phone's going straight to voicemail. That wasn't enough to confirm anything. Coverage out here is unreliable at best." "But paired with everything else, I'm responding," I said. Benally didn't argue. "I'll notify command." I pulled back onto Highway 12, accelerating harder than I should have. The road blurred under my headlights. My thoughts raced faster than the engine. This thing wasn't just killing, it was testing. Response time, distance, pattern. At the Yazzie Ranch, security lights were already on. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made my stomach twist. The livestock gate stood wide open. I parked, radioed my arrival, and stepped out. "Navajo Nation Police," I called. "Mr. Yazzie? Mrs. Yazzie?" No response. The house lights were off, but I could hear something. Movement inside, not footsteps, something softer. I approached the pen first. The sheep were alive, huddled tightly in one corner, eyes wide, bodies pressed together in terror. Whatever had come here hadn't finished, yet. The tracks were fresher, sharper. They circled the pen once, then headed toward the house. My flashlight followed them across the dirt to the wall, and then up. The tracks didn't stop at the door. They climbed, straight up the side of the house. I felt my chest tighten. "Dispatch," I said quietly into the radio. "I have tracks leading up the exterior wall of the Yazzie residence." A pause. "Say again, Unit 7. Tracks," I repeated, "vertical, leading to the roof." There was silence on the line. Then, very carefully, dispatch said, "Unit 7, backup is en route. ETA 12 minutes. Do not enter the residence alone. I tilted my flashlight upward. Something scraped softly above me, on the roof. And for the first time that night, I understood something with absolute clarity. This thing wasn't just learning how we move. It was learning where we live. I didn't move. Every instinct I had told me not to stand directly under a roof when something unknown was moving on top of it. But instinct and training don't always agree. Training says you don't abandon a possible family in danger. I stepped back slowly, keeping the flashlight trained on the roof line. Navajo Nation police, I called out again, louder now. If anyone inside can hear me, stay where you are and do not come outside. The scraping sound stopped. Not faded, stopped. That silence felt deliberate. My radio crackled. Unit 7, Unit 8 is 10 minutes out. Sergeant Largo is monitoring. Copy, I replied, without taking my eyes off the roof. Then I saw it. A shape appeared at the edge of the roofline. At first, it looked like a shadow shifting against the sky, but then fingers curled over the edge. Too many fingers. They were long and thin, bending in places joints shouldn't bend. Pale in the security light, almost translucent, with dark nails at the tips. My stomach dropped. Slowly, something pulled itself forward. A head rose into view. I'd been bracing myself for something monstrous. Claws, teeth, something obviously inhuman. What I got was worse. It was almost right. The head was shaped wrong, elongated slightly, like someone had stretched a human skull just enough that your brain noticed before you could stop it. The ears sat too high. The eyes, those same amber-green eyes, were set too far apart, and they were locked on me. I raised my weapon, centering the sights on its upper chest. Navajo Nation police, I said, my voice steady through pure effort. Show me your hands and climb down slowly. The thing didn't flinch. Its head tilted, not a curious tilt, an evaluative one. The angle was wrong, too far, too smooth, like the motion had been rehearsed. Then its mouth opened, not wide, not threatening, just enough. I saw rows of teeth inside, too many, receding farther back than a mouth should go. And then it smiled. I don't know how else to describe it. The corners of its mouth pulled upward, the eyes narrowed slightly. It was a perfect imitation of a human expression, but there was no emotion behind it, no warmth, just replication. It had learned that smile from us. Last warning, I said, finger tightening on the trigger. Climb down now. For a moment, just a moment, I thought it might comply. Instead, it moved, not toward me, away. It flowed backward over the opposite edge of the roof in a single, fluid motion, faster than my brain could track. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. I ran. Around the house, weapon up, flashlight sweeping. The backyard came into view. Empty desert beyond, fence line intact, except for what lay on the ground. 3 sheep, arranged carefully, in a triangle. Their necks were cut cleanly, blood still dark and wet. Their legs bent backward at the joints, positioned with deliberate symmetry. These kills were fresh. I felt something twist in my chest. A light flicked on inside the house. A figure appeared behind the upstairs window, a woman, her face pale with terror. She screamed. I spun. The thing was back, 10 feet away, on all fours. Under the security lights, I could finally see it clearly. It looked like someone had tried to build a coyote from memory and failed. The body was canine in outline, but the proportions were off. Limbs too long, joints too pronounced, spine curved with unnatural flexibility. The head was wrong in every way, jaw hinged so it could open sideways as well as down. Those eyes never left me. They weren't predatory, they were curious. Then it stood. The transition was smooth, practiced. The front limbs straightened, elongating into arms. The spine extended, the body reoriented until it was upright. It was roughly my height, almost human. Almost. The proportions didn't quite match. The shoulders were too narrow. The arms hung a little too long. The head still wrong, still stretched. It took a step toward me. I stepped between it and the house without thinking. No, I said, you don't go near them. It paused. Its attention shifted from me to the window to the house. Then it made a sound. At first, it wasn't speech. Clicks. low vibrations that I felt more than heard. Like the sound was bypassing my ears and resonating directly in my skull. When I didn't respond, it tried again. This time the sounds were closer to words. Not quite English. The rhythm was wrong, the spacing off. It was trying to talk. "What are you?" I whispered. The thing cocked its head again. Then it laughed. The sound was wrong in every possible way. It started low and climbed in pitch, modulating unnaturally. It made my teeth ache. My skin crawled. Laughter is supposed to be shared. This was performance. Sirens wailed in the distance. The thing's head snapped toward the road. Then it dropped to all fours and ran, not away from the sound, but toward it. It crossed the yard in seconds, body twisting, flowing around obstacles like liquid. I tried to track it with my weapon, but couldn't keep up. As my headlights caught the edge of the road, I slammed on the brakes. Written in the dirt, in letters nearly 3 feet tall, was a single word: learning. I sat there, engine idling, staring at it. It hadn't been hunting. It had been study. And now it wanted us to know. By the time the first backup unit arrived, the word in the dirt was already gone, not erased, not smudged, just disturbed enough that the letters were no longer clear, like something had dragged a foot through it on purpose. I stood by my vehicle, weapon still in my hand, trying to slow my breathing. Adrenaline does strange things to time. Everything felt stretched, unreal, like my body was operating a few seconds behind my thoughts. Officer Begay jumped out of the first unit, eyes scanning immediately. "Where is it?" he asked. "Gone," I said. "For now." More vehicles pulled in. Red and blue lights washed over the property, turning the scene surreal. Sergeant Largo arrived moments later, his expression tight as he took in the open gate, the dead sheep, the tracks climbing the wall. He didn't ask if I was sure, he just said, "Walk me through it." I did, step by step. No embellishment, no theories, just what I'd seen, heard, measured. When I finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Largo exhaled slowly. "Secure the scene," he said. "Nobody touches anything until daylight." "What about the family?" Begay asked. "They're staying inside with an officer posted," Largo replied. "No exceptions." He turned to me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure it was true. "What you saw on the roof," he continued carefully. "You're confident." "Yes," I said. And it wasn't alone in the sense we understand that word. That made him frown. "Explain." "It was aware," I said. "Of us, of response times, of where we'd hesitate." I didn't need to say more. By sunrise, the Yazzie Ranch looked like a crime scene from a different world. Daylight didn't make it better. It made it worse. The tracks were clearer now. The morphing progression unmistakable. The climb marks on the siding visible as faint distortions in the dust. Wildlife Services arrived first, then investigators from BIA. Every single one of them said the same thing. "I've never seen anything like this." By mid-morning, word had reached higher than it should have. Phones rang constantly. Command staff arrived. Conversations moved into closed rooms. And then a vehicle I didn't recognize pulled in. Black. Unmarked. A man stepped out wearing a suit that didn't belong out here. He didn't look lost. He didn't look impressed. He looked tired. He approached Sergeant Largo and flashed credentials too quickly for me to read. "Special Agent David Morrison," he said. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." That got everyone's attention. Largo stiffened. "FBI doesn't usually respond to livestock disturbances." Morrison's eyes flicked briefly toward the pen. "This isn't about livestock," he said calmly. He asked to speak with me privately. We stood near my patrol vehicle while the others pretended not to listen. "You were the first on scene at Nez's property," Morrison said. "Yes." "And the first to see it at the Yazzie Ranch?" "Yes." "Describe the blink." I paused. "Bottom to top," I said. "Slow." He nodded, like that confirmed something he already knew. "The head tilt?" "Rotational," I replied. "Too far." Another nod. He glanced toward the house where officers were still posted. "It smiled at you," he said. "That wasn't a question." "How do you know that?" I asked. "Because they always do once they're confident," Morrison replied. I stared at him. They, he sighed. We don't have a formal classification, he said. Internally we call them mimics. My skin prickled. They learn by observation, he continued. Behavior, posture, speech patterns. They improve rapidly with exposure. You've seen this before, I said. Yes. Where? Reservations, he replied. Remote corridors, places with jurisdictional complexity and long response times. I thought of Highway 12. How many? I asked. Confirmed? He said. This makes the fourth active one we're tracking. Active. That word stuck with me. What happens now? I asked. Morrison looked me directly in the eye. Now we disrupt, he said. We make it uncomfortable enough that it moves on before it finishes learning. And if it doesn't, then people get hurt, he said simply. That afternoon, the attacks stopped. No more livestock calls. No more sounds. No more sightings. It was like a switch had been flipped. Families were relocated temporarily. Patrols were doubled. Officers were told, unofficially, to work in pairs at all times. Officially, the report listed the incidents as unidentified predator activity under federal review. Unofficially, everyone knew better. Morrison and his team stayed 3 days. They deployed equipment I didn't recognize. Sensors that didn't look for heat or movement, but something else entirely. On the third night, Morrison found me sitting in my vehicle staring at the road. You know it's not gone for good, he said. I know, I replied. It wrote that message for you, he said. Not the department. You. Why? I asked. He considered that. Because you were the first one it couldn't fool, he said. And the first one it wants to understand. That didn't feel like a compliment. Before he left, he handed me a card. Plain. No logo. Call this number if you see anything that feels almost right, he said. That's usually the tell. That night, as I drove patrol along Highway 12, everything looked normal again. Too normal, and somewhere out there, something was adjusting. The quiet didn't last. At first, it felt like relief. 3 nights without a single livestock call. No strange sounds. No reports from Highway 12. Patrol logs went back to normal. Traffic stops, welfare checks, domestic calls. The kind of work that makes your shoulders loosen without you noticing. But quiet like that doesn't mean safety. It means observation. Morrison's team packed up on the 4th day. No announcement, no debrief. Just black vehicles rolling out before sunrise like they'd never been there. Before he left, Morrison stopped me outside the station. They don't rush, he said. Once they hit resistance, they slow down. Change tactics. Into what? I asked. He hesitated. Closer, he said. That word stayed with me. A week passed, then another. I started noticing small things. Not incidents, anomalies. A call about a man standing by the roadside at 2:30 a.m., not asking for help, just watching traffic pass. By the time I arrived, he was gone. No footprints, no direction of travel. A report of a stray dog that stood upright when a rancher shined a light at it. The rancher laughed it off when daylight came, embarrassed by his own fear. A 911 hang-up call traced to a disconnected number along Highway 12. No residents, no cell tower coverage. Nothing solid enough to justify escalation, but enough to make my jaw stay tight. Beanley noticed it too. You sleeping? He asked one night as we drove patrol together. Enough, I said. He glanced at me. You're watching people instead of the road. I know. So am I. That was the first time either of us said it out loud. The call came 3 nights later. Routine patrol check. Unit 4 hadn't responded in over 10 minutes. Officer Benali. My stomach dropped. Dispatch tried again. No response. I was already turning the vehicle around when the radio crackled. Unit 7, dispatch said. Last known location for Unit 4 is mile marker 47. 47, same stretch of road, same dead zone. I pushed the engine hard, headlights slicing to the dark. My thoughts raced faster than the speedometer. Benali wasn't careless. He didn't miss check-ins. When I arrived, his patrol vehicle was stopped in the road, driver's door open, lights still flashing. No Benali. I stepped out slowly, weapon drawn, scanning the area. The desert stretched empty in both directions. Benali, I called. Navajo Nation Police. No answer. The radio inside his unit crackled with static. I leaned in, keeping my back to the vehicle. That's when I heard breathing. Not from the desert. From the radio. Heavy. Labored. The mic button was pressed down. "Benally," I said. "Where are you?" A pause. Then his voice came through, weak and strained. "Don't. Come closer." My heart hammered. "Where are you?" I demanded. "It's fast," he whispered. "Too fast. It's—" The transmission dissolved into static. Behind me something shifted. I spun. Benally was standing at the edge of the road, 20 yards away, perfectly still. Relief surged, then died instantly. He wasn't moving, not swaying, not breathing visibly, just standing there, arms at his sides, head tilted slightly. "Wrong. Benally," I said carefully. "Step toward me." He didn't respond. I took one step forward. His head rotated. Not a nod, a rotation. My grip tightened on my weapon. "Step away from him," a voice said behind me. I turned to see Morrison standing beside my vehicle, calm as if we were discussing paperwork. "That's not your officer," he said. "What?" I hissed. He held up a tablet. Thermal imaging glowed on the screen. A human heat signature lay curled in a shallow wash 40 yards north. "Alive," Morrison said. "Unconscious. That thing wanted you to see him first." As if on cue, the Benally shape twitched. Its posture softened. Its shoulders slumped slightly. It took a step toward us. Morrison raised a small device in his hand and pressed a button. A sound filled the air, high-pitched, almost beyond hearing. The shape convulsed. Its outline shimmered, distorting like heat haze. The human proportions slid out of alignment, revealing something beneath too many joints, limbs bending where nothing should bend. Then it ran, not away from us, past us, gone in seconds, refound Benally where Morrison said he'd be. Alive, shaken, bruising around his neck where something had grabbed him. He didn't remember much. Just eyes, he said later, and speed. Officially, it was listed as an assault by an unknown suspect. Unofficially, Morrison told me the truth. "It's progressed," he said. "It's no longer just mimicking animals. It's practicing people." "Why Benally?" I asked. "Because you work together," he replied. "It's learning context." That night, I didn't sleep. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. It wasn't studying us as a group anymore. It was studying us individually. And it had just learned what one of us looked like when he was vulnerable. Benally was back on duty after 3 weeks. Doctors cleared him physically, though none of them could explain why his heart rate spiked randomly, or why he startled at certain sounds. Officially, he'd been attacked by an unknown suspect and dragged from his vehicle. The report avoided details. Everyone signed off. No one believed it. The first night he returned to patrol, I was paired with him. Neither of us asked for it. Neither of us objected. The desert looked the same as it always had. Open, quiet, and different. But riding beside Benally now felt different. He sat straighter. Watched the mirrors too often. Flinched when the radio crackled unexpectedly. "You remember anything new?" I asked as we cruised Highway 12. He shook his head. "Just pieces, like dreams that don't connect." "What pieces?" "The smell," he said after a pause. "Not animal, not human. Something dry. Like dust that's been alive too long." That sent a chill through me. The call came just after 3 a.m. Not an emergency, not even a 911. A school custodian had reported movement near Sile Elementary. Someone walking the playground fence after hours. "Probably a drunk," dispatch said. But he said the person didn't respond when spoken to. We arrived together. The school sat dark and empty, the building looming under the floodlights. The playground was still. No movement, no sounds. Benally scanned the fence line. "Tracks," he said. I crouched beside him. They were faint, smaller than before, barely visible, human-sized. But the spacing was wrong, too even, too measured. We followed them across the dirt toward the swings. They stopped in the middle of the playground. No sign of departure, just absence. "Kids will be here in 4 hours, Benally muttered. That thought sat heavy between us. We cleared the area and logged it as suspicious activity. Nothing more we could justify. The next day, a teacher called the station. She said one of her kindergarten students had been drawing the same thing all week. A tall stick figure with too many fingers, standing next to a smaller stick figure labeled me. The other one was labeled new friend. We didn't put that in any report. After that, the sightings changed. Not livestock, not roads, people. A woman reported an elderly man knocking on her door at 2 a.m. asking for water. When she brought it back, he was gone. No footprints in the dust. A trucker swore he picked up a hitchhiker who knew his name, his route, and details about his family, then vanished from the passenger seat while the truck was still moving. Each time, the description was almost perfect. Almost. Eyes that didn't blink enough. Speech that paused in the wrong places. Movements that were too smooth, but only for a second, then normal again. Morrison returned quietly, alone this time. It's integrating, he told us in a closed briefing room. This is the phase we worry about. Integrating how? Chief Largo asked. By becoming unremarkable, Morrison replied. By passing. How long does that take? I asked. He looked at me. Depends on exposure, he said, and how much it's allowed to practice. That night I responded to a routine welfare check. Elderly woman, lived alone. Family hadn't heard from her in 2 days. Her house was fine. No forced entry. No disturbance. She answered the door herself. Smiled. Thanked me for checking. Everything about her was normal, except when she turned to walk back inside. Just for a fraction of a second I saw it. Her elbow bent too far. Then it didn't. I stood on the porch longer than necessary, heart pounding, mind racing. Officer? She called. Everything okay? Yes, I said. And I hated myself for the relief in her eyes. That's when it hit me. This thing didn't need to hide in the desert anymore. It didn't need darkness or isolation. It had learned our patterns, our empathy, our hesitation. It knew when we wouldn't draw a weapon, when we wouldn't question, when we'd convince ourselves it was nothing. Benally noticed my silence as we drove later that night. You see it too, don't you? He asked quietly. I nodded. And you don't know when, he continued. That's the worst part. A call came in just before shift change. A child standing in the road at mile marker 52, not crying, not moving, just standing. I felt my stomach drop. Dispatch added, no missing child reports in the area. I reached for my radio. Miss Betch, I said, already knowing the answer. What's the child wearing? White dress, she replied. Long dark hair. Benally looked at me. It had chosen carefully. I grabbed Morrison's card from my wallet. Dispatch, I said, voice tight. Call this number. Tell him it's back. Tell him it's escalated. As I started the engine, one thought hammered through my head over and over again. It wasn't learning how to hunt anymore. It was learning how to belong. I arrived first. 2 civilian vehicles were already stopped on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing, their drivers standing well back from the road. Neither of them wanted to get any closer, and I couldn't blame them. The child stood in the middle of Highway 12, perfectly still, head down, arms at her sides, bare feet on cold asphalt. My headlights washed over her and she didn't react. No flinch, no squint, nothing. I stepped out slowly, leaving my door open behind me. This is Navajo Nation Police, I called, keeping my voice calm. Honey, can you hear me? The child's head lifted. The movement was smooth. Too smooth. She looked at me. Her face was exactly what dispatch described. 8 or 9 years old. Long, dark hair. White dress that looked impossibly clean for where we were. But her eyes, they caught the light wrong, not reflecting like a child's eyes should. Holding it. I'm lost, she said. The words were right. The voice was not. Each syllable was carefully shaped, like someone repeating a phrase they'd practiced without understanding the meaning. I took one step closer. Where are your parents? I asked. She didn't answer right away. That pause wasn't fear. It was calculation. Gone, she said finally. My pulse hammered in my ears. Okay, I said. I need you to step to the side of the road so we can keep you safe. She didn't move. Behind me, I heard another unit approach. Tires on gravel. Doors opening. Good. Backup mattered now more than ever. You're cold, I continued, forcing warmth into my voice. Let's get you out of the road. Her head tilted, not curiosity. Assessment. Copying, she said. The word landed like a punch. What did you say? I asked. She looked past me toward the gathering officers, the civilians, the vehicles. When she spoke again, her voice was closer to normal. You talk me, she said. How you talk when you're calm. I stopped walking. You're not a child, I said quietly. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Better now, she said. I practiced. In my peripheral vision, I saw one of the civilians step forward instinctively. Get back, I shouted. The thing moved, not toward me, toward them, fast, too fast. I raised my weapon and froze. I couldn't fire, not with civilians in the background, not at something that looked like a child. It knew that. It brushed past the civilians without touching them, close enough that one of them screamed, then sprinted off the road and into the desert. Its form blurred as it ran, stretching, shifting, briefly wrong before settling again. Gone. Dust settled. Silence followed. No one spoke. BATHEP units arrived moments later, lights flashing, officers shouting questions. I stood there, weapon still raised, staring at the empty stretch of road where it had been. Morrison arrived 40 minutes later. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. It chose a child, he said grimly. That's escalation. It talked to me, I said, about learning. He nodded. They always announce when they reach a new phase. We searched the area anyway. Found tracks, lighter now, almost human. The morphing progression still there if you knew how to see it, but subtle enough that someone unfamiliar would miss it entirely. That's the danger, Morrison said quietly. At this stage, most people won't notice anything wrong. What happens next? I asked. He looked toward the dark horizon. Now it tests boundaries, he said. Authority, trust, proximity. Over the next week, reports came in steadily. A child knocking on doors asking for help. A teenager sitting alone on a bus stop bench at 3 a.m. A lost hiker who knew too much about the people who found him. Each time it vanished before units arrived. Each time it vanished before units arrived. Each time it was closer. Schools increased security. Officers were briefed quietly. Parents were told to keep children inside after dark. No one said why. Binali pulled me aside one night outside the station. It's not just mimicking anymore, he said. It's choosing roles. Roles for what? I asked. He didn't answer right away. To stay, he said finally. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the hesitation, the way my finger had tightened on the trigger and then stopped, the way it had counted on that. It wasn't just learning how to look human. It was learning how we decide, how we freeze, how we protect, and how we fail. At 1:47 a.m. my phone rang. Dispatch. Officer Yazzie, she said, voice tight. We've got another situation. Where? I asked. She swallowed audibly. Sill Elementary. My blood ran cold. What's the call? I asked. There's a child in the building, she said. A teacher reported seeing someone in a classroom after hours. Any forced entry? No. Any description? Yes, she said softly. The child told her she was just learning how to be a kid. I hung up and reached for my keys. Because now it wasn't testing the edges anymore. It was stepping inside. Seal Elementary looked wrong at night. Schools are supposed to feel empty after hours. But this was different. The building sat too still under the floodlights, like it was holding its breath. The playground equipment cast long shadows across the blacktop, twisted shapes stretching farther than they should have. 3 patrol units were already on scene when I arrived. 2 officers stood near the front doors, weapons low but ready. No one was talking. That's the classroom, one of them said, pointing. Second hallway on the left. Kindergarten wing. I nodded and keyed my radio. Dispatch, Unit 7 on scene. Establishing perimeter. Copy, Unit 7. I took a slow breath and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Not smoke, not rot. Something dry and old, like dust that had never settled. The hallway lights were on, but half of them flickered. My footsteps sounded too loud on the tile floor. Every instinct told me to slow down, to listen. That's when I heard it. A child humming, soft, tuneless, almost cheerful. It was coming from the classroom. I raised my flashlight and approached the door, keeping to the side. The door was slightly open. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a nightlight shaped like a cartoon animal. The child sat at one of the small desks, feet dangling, back straight, hands folded neatly. She was drawing. "Hey," I said quietly. "You shouldn't be here." Her head lifted. The motion was smoother than it should have been. "Oh," she said. "I know." I felt my grip tighten on the flashlight. "Where are your parents?" I asked. She considered the question. "Still learning that," she replied. I stepped into the room, careful to keep distance between us. "Put the crayon down," I said. She looked at the crayon in her hand as if surprised to find it there. "Oh," she said again. "This helps." "Helps with what?" "Hands," she said, holding hers up. "I keep getting them wrong." My stomach twisted. I glanced at the drawing taped to the wall beside her desk. It showed two figures, one labeled teacher, one labeled me. The second one had too many fingers. "Why are you here?" I asked. She tilted her head. "To practice," she said. "This place has many examples." My radio crackled softly behind me. Officers shifting positions, waiting for my signal. "You need to come with me," I said. "We're going to go outside." She frowned. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. "But I'm almost right," she said. "They don't notice anymore." I felt a cold realization settle in. She wasn't wrong. "How many people have you spoken to?" I asked. She smiled. "Enough." Her eyes flicked past me toward the doorway. I spun. Nothing. No movement. But when I turned back, she was closer. Too close. I stumbled backward instinctively, bringing my weapon up. "Don't," she said gently. "You hesitate." She took another step. The shape wavered. For a split second, the illusion slipped. Limbs bent at impossible angles. Fingers elongated. The head stretched, jaw widening in a way that made my vision blur. Then it snapped back. Perfect again. "Outside," I ordered. "Now." She looked genuinely curious. "What happens when I'm perfect?" she asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Sirens wailed outside as more units arrived. The sound made her flinch, not in fear, but irritation. "Too loud," she said. "They ruin focus." She stepped past me. I moved to block her path. For a moment, we stood inches apart. Her eyes caught the light. "Amber green. You're the hardest," she said. "You watch too much." "And you don't watch enough," I replied. She tilted her head. Then she did something new. She laughed. But this time it sounded right. Human. Warm. And that terrified me more than anything else she'd done. She darted past me, out the door, down the hallway. Officers shouted. Someone slipped. Someone screamed. By the time we reached the exit, she was gone. No broken locks, no forced doors, just absence. Morrison arrived before dawn. He listened to my report without interrupting. When I finished, he closed his eyes briefly. "It crossed a threshold," he said. "Once they enter spaces meant for children, containment becomes nearly impossible." "What do we do?" Chief Largo asked. Morrison didn't answer right away. "Now," he said slowly, "we assume it's blending." That night, the drawings were removed from the classroom. No explanation was given. The official report called it a false alarm. But as I drove patrol later, I passed a bus stop. A child sat there alone. She looked up at me and waved. For a second, just a second, I couldn't tell if she was waving goodbye or hello. After the school incident, everything changed. Not officially. On paper, nothing unusual had happened. No arrests, no suspects, no follow-up. But on the ground, the rules were different. Patrols doubled across the Route 12 corridor. No one worked alone. Every officer was quietly briefed on what to look for. Blink patterns, joint angles, speech rhythms that sounded rehearsed instead of natural. We never used names for it. Names make things real in a way paperwork can't contain. Morrison's team stayed longer this time. They set up an observation post outside Window Rock, tucked far enough away that most people never noticed the equipment humming quietly in the desert night. They told us something that didn't make it into any report. It was no longer staying in one form. That explained the calls. A woman at a gas station who spoke too slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. A man walking the highway at dawn who waved at every passing car but never blinked. A teenager who stood perfectly still in the rain for almost 10 minutes before walking away. Each time, by the time we arrived, everything looked normal. Too normal. Being Nally transferred to day shift 2 weeks later. He didn't say why. He didn't have to. "You ever wish you didn't see it?" he asked me once, packing up his locker. I thought about it. "No," I said finally. "But I wish I didn't know how good it's getting." He nodded. "That's what keeps me up." Life didn't stop just because something unnatural was moving through it. People still argued. Kids still rode bikes. Elders still waved from porches. And that was the problem. Because now, every interaction carried a quiet question. Is this real? I started catching myself watching people too closely. Counting blinks, tracking posture, listening to the way sentences flowed. It wasn't healthy, but it felt necessary. One night, I stopped at the convenience store near the edge of my patrol area. The clerk smiled and asked how my night was going. "Quiet," I said. "Good," she replied. Quiet is good. Her elbow bent just a little too far when she reached for the receipt. I blinked. It didn't happen again. I drove away with my heart racing, hating myself for the relief that followed. Morrison found me later that week, sitting alone in my patrol car. "This is the hardest part," he said. "What is?" "When you stop trusting your instincts," he replied, "or when you start trusting them too much. There's a line between awareness and paranoia. They push us toward it on purpose." "So what do?" I asked. "We document," he said. "We share patterns, and we accept that we won't always be sure." That wasn't comforting. The sightings slowed again after that. Weeks passed without anything concrete. The desert settled back into its familiar rhythms. Almost. Then one morning, a kindergarten teacher called in sick. She said she'd had the same dream 3 nights in a row. In it, a child stood at the foot of her bed, watching her sleep. Not threatening, just studying her face. When she asked who the child was, it smiled and said, "I'm almost ready." Psyche Val flagged it as stress, no further action. I found a new drawing taped inside my locker one night. No name, no explanation, 2 stick figures. One labeled officer, the other labeled friend. The second one had the fingers fixed this time. Only one thing was wrong. The eyes were still the wrong color, amber green. I stared at that drawing for a long time before tearing it up and throwing it away. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it didn't matter. Because whatever was learning out there wasn't practicing anymore. It was refining. And I know, that the reason it hasn't done anything overt in weeks isn't because it left. It's because it doesn't need to rush. It's close enough now. Sometimes, late at night, I catch my reflection in the patrol car window and hold my breath for a second too long. Just to make sure. Because the worst realization of all didn't come with fear. It came with doubt. I'm not afraid of what it might do next. I'm afraid of the moment when I stop being able to tell whether the person standing in front of me is human or something that finally learned how to be one. I'm still on patrol. That's the part people expect to change, but it hasn't. I still respond to calls. I still log reports. I still drive Highway 12 under the same stars my grandparents used to navigate by. Life doesn't stop just because something impossible slips into it. The FBI team left 2 months ago. No goodbye. No final briefing. Morrison didn't even come to the station this time. I found his card missing from my wallet one night, and I don't remember taking it out. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe he didn't want me calling anymore. Officially, the incidents are over. No livestock kills. No after-hours school sightings. No strange calls that can't be explained away. On paper, the situation resolved itself. But out here, we've learned not to trust paper. The reports stopped because whatever was causing them didn't need to be reported anymore. It had learned how not to be noticed. The last confirmed sighting was 6 weeks ago. A man walking along the shoulder of the highway just before dawn. Normal clothes, normal stride. He waved at a passing patrol unit. The officer waved back. Later, when he thought about it, he couldn't remember the man's face. That's the pattern now. No fear, no panic, just gaps. I don't dream about it anymore. That stopped after the school incident. What I get instead is worse. the absence of dreams. Like my mind doesn't want to wander into places it can't defend. Benelli checks in sometimes. He sounds better on the phone. Lighter. He doesn't ask about night patrols, and I don't volunteer information. Some conversations are safe or incomplete. A week ago, I responded to a minor traffic accident near mile marker 38. Fender bender. No injuries. 2 drivers exchanging insurance information. Routine. One of them thanked me for coming so quickly. Her voice was steady, her eyes were normal, her movements made sense. As she turned to leave, she paused. Just for a fraction of a second. And then she said, "You're doing well." I hadn't told her my name. I sat in my vehicle for a long time after that call ended, long enough that dispatch checked on me. Unit 7, status, they asked. Clear, I said. That was true. Clear doesn't mean safe. Clear just means nothing obvious is wrong. I think about what my grandfather used to say, that there was a time when boundaries were thinner, when forms weren't fixed, when the world hadn't decided what everything was allowed to be yet. Maybe we're drifting back toward that. Maybe the line between human and almost human was never as solid as we believed. The scariest part isn't that something learned how to imitate us. It's how quickly we adapted to that idea. We adjusted procedures. We changed patrol patterns. We stopped asking certain questions. We learned to live with uncertainty because the alternative was fear. And fear gets in the way of function. I still watch eyes. I still notice hands. I still listen for the rhythm in voices. But I've realized something I don't say out loud. The more I look for it, the less confident I am that I'll recognize it when it matters, because perfection isn't loud. Perfection blends. Last night, an elderly woman stopped by the station asking for directions to the clinic. She smiled, thanked me, walked away. For just a second, when she turned her head, I thought I saw her eyes catch the light wrong. Amber green. I blinked. Normal brown. A trick of the light. Has to be. She disappeared around the corner of the building, and I sat there longer than necessary, staring at the empty space she'd left behind. The radio crackled. Unit 7, we've got a 10 to 55. Livestock disturbance. Route 12, mile marker 38. Same stretch of road, different night. I started the engine. Unit 7 responding, I said, because that's what we do. We respond, we document, we protect. Even when we're not sure what we're protecting people from anymore. As I drove out into the darkness, I caught my reflection in the windshield for a moment. My eyes, tired but familiar, blinking the way they always have. I held that image just a second longer than usual, just to be sure, because somewhere out there, something learned how to walk like us, talk like us, smile like us. And the most dangerous thing about it isn't that it exists. It's that one night, maybe soon, maybe years from now, I might respond to a call, look someone in the eye, and not realize that the boundary finally disappeared, not with violence, not with noise, but quietly, perfectly. And by then there won't be anything left to hunt, only us.